It's the most miserable time of the year. And that's what I have said about spring forever. It is the most miserable time of year, especially the first half. And we're going to see that misery play out this week across the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states. We've got issues today with clouds and showers. We are going to have issues later Tuesday into Wednesday, thanks to the curse of the onshore flow and a low passing by to our south with an ocean wind and some rain. And we're going to see it play out again later Wednesday night and Thursday with showers and thunderstorms. All that and more on today's Sunday morning Joe and Joe Weather Show. And good morning, Mr. Rayo. We
Good morning.
Yes.
Are we not going to have the sponsor
Omni is
mention or?
Omni. Well, no, Omni is taking a bit of a break for the next few months. So we're going to,
Oh,
but they still have their logo on the bottom of the screen, and they're at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, 631-756-1125. The telephone number for Omni True Value Hardware, your go-to place for the spring. The website is.
OmniTrueValue.com. I'm going to miss saying that
Yeah, but
now
look, no, they're
in the
coming back.
coming.
No, they're going to come back in
I'm
August. This is a break. This
okay.
is a break time for them. They took a break last summer, but which is fine. They're great
You know,
people there, and they
thinking about.
this is a slower, this is a busier time, but in a different way. So for them. So we'll pick them up
I
back
was
in
always
August.
conflicted. I was always conflicted about August. August is the month of my birthday, but it was also when I got to my birthday, August the 2nd, I always knew there was only 1 month to go before school began again. And that started me on, uh-oh, that means that it's going to start getting chilly. And soon we're going to have to deal with the falling leaves and snow and everything else. And then I would get depressed. I, I was not a big, August is the big month for and that's why everybody goes on vacation in August. They realize that everything is going to come back. The cycle is going to be renewed again. So before all of that nonsense begins again, let's jam our 2 week vacation somewhere in this month so that we can put it out of our minds.
Right.
And so when Omni comes back, I don't know. That's going to be kind of like, uh-oh, we're almost at the end. We're not even there yet. We're not even in summer. And right now we're going to talk about we're into spring, but it doesn't feel like spring, Joe. In fact, one of our people on the chat board talking about it's like a winter wonderland out where he is with already a couple of inches of snow and still snowing.
Yes, our buddy Chuck Cardillo, and in fact, he sent me some pictures this morning, which I will get, which I'm trying to bring up now on the screen. So just give me a moment here as I set that up. But he's got, now this is a shot, or it will be, of his couple of inches of snow, and it's happening. There aren't any winter weather advisories that I saw, but it is snowing in parts of the Catskills and in a few other places across western New York and northernmost Pennsylvania, and you can see it there. His lilac bush. Beautifully covered with the white stuff. He still gets these, he's at 3,000 feet up, so he still gets these occasional snowfalls here going into the month of April. But as far as everyone else is concerned, at least from this standpoint, in terms of southern New York and down near the coast, uh, this is we're pretty much. I think we're done. I mean, it doesn't seem to me we had our in a sense, Joe, we had our shot last week when we had that brutally cold air mass come down, but unfortunately for snow lovers, it didn't set up quite right with everything else in the atmosphere. It was basically cold and dry and kiss it goodbye. So unless we get, if anything, I'm thinking maybe around mid-month we might see a few days where temperatures go in the opposite direction.
Well, it is somebody on the chat board, Timmy Grow, says that the sun angle today is equivalent to the sun angle on August 29th. Of course, on August 29th, we still have a lot of leftover warm air, and it's quite possible that we could see temperatures at or above 90 on August 29th. But meanwhile, today, we still have a lot of chilly air banked in across Canada. And it looks like, as you just mentioned, Joe, by mid-month, that still is going to remain banked in while the warm air building to our south tries to surge into our area. And it'll be nice. It will be nice to see those temperatures climb. These days, anything above 60 feels warm to us, but it'll be nice to see a few days, string a few days together of 70 plus. And that will, of course, also mean that a lot of people, like my wife, will be able to get out and do whatever she needs to do to get the grass, the lawn, the gardens back into shape, because you just can't do anything. I mean, right now we have a few drops. It's kind of chilly. Yesterday was dank and damp. No, excuse me. Friday was dank and damp for much of the day. We actually had a little bit of a break yesterday with a lot of sunshine here, and then it clouded over. And again, right now, depending upon where you are, it's either snow or rain, and it's another one of those dreary Sundays.
Yes, I am. By the way, I am sitting in absolutely cloudless skies. The 10 o'clock
Yes.
temperature at Blairsville was at the airport was 49, but I think I'm pushing. Hang on a second. I think I'm pushing. What am I at? 54, 54 right now, and appreciate everybody with the getting us on to the extra 15-minute early start. This way I can get down to the dog park and take the dog for his run with all his dog friends. And I plan to go hiking this afternoon, Joe, at Vogel State Park, which is 5 minutes from my house. It's a beautiful park with gorgeous lakes. And one thing I have to say about Georgia, the especially here in North Georgia, the state parks are beautiful. I mean, they really are just absolutely beautiful. They're well maintained. Lots of hiking trails, lakes, waterfalls, ponds, streams, little rivers. Just a beautiful way to spend the afternoon in the mountains. And of course, if that's not your thing, there's a lot of wineries here too, which is uh, even better if you're a drinking sort of person.
Yeah. You got to tell me one time. I know this is not your thing, or it's not your bag, but I'd really be interested to know, um, on a moonless night where there's no bright moon outside, and it's nice and clear, what the condition of the sky is. How much of the fainter stars you can see, both from where you are, where you live, your home base, but also you've mentioned that there are places that are not too far away, up in the higher terrain areas, where there really is not much in the way of lights,
Yeah.
and what the sky looks from those areas. I think, because I'm Renata and I are thinking about taking a little time off in late May, looking around for a place that has a nice, really nice dark sky somewhere in this country. And I have to tell you, Joe, the sad part about it is that there's so much light pollution now. It has literally spread across the entire country, almost metastasized like a cancer. Even places that just a few years ago were jet black and had no lights, now even these places are lit up, and it's getting more and more difficult to find a really dark sky where you could see a lot of stars. And this is also influencing the observatories. I mean, many of the big observatories that you read about when you were growing up, like Yerkes Observatory in Wisconsin, or Palomar, at one time the largest telescope in the world, they hardly can do anything anymore because
Yeah.
so many lights have sprung up, literally right, out beyond their territory, and that light goes up into the sky and throws up a lot of glare and everything else. Thank you, Chuck. In the midst of all of the snow, Chuck Cardillo hitting super chats this morning saying, thank you, Joe, for sharing that picture with the rest of the chat board. He said, I love this weather and my wife hates it. Joe and Joe, thanks for all you
That's a
do.
perfect
So,
ingredient for a great marriage, by the way. uh,
well, it's like that Christmas that Christmas that you spent in Connecticut a couple of years ago with your daughters, and
oh, yeah, that was
I looked out
that was a great Christmas morning. It was
and I
perfect.
looked out the window that morning. I said, "Look at that! If this isn't a white Christmas, if this isn't Currier and Ives, I don't know what is." Then my wife looked out the window and she said,
Oh,
"Oh,
poo.
poo."
Yes, exactly. Well, going back to your light pollution question, there's very little light pollution where I am. Uh, the the lights that are on the roads here, it's not like in the metro areas where it's every 100 feet you've got a street light. It's every every 1,000 feet, every quarter of a mile or so, you run into there's a street light on the main roads. On some of the less traveled roads, there are no lights at all. And of course, when you go into the mountains, which around here is, you can make a left turn, you start to go into a mountain. You make a right turn, you start to go into a mountain. There's a lot of areas here where there's not there's hardly any lights at all. So the sky the sky views here are fairly starlit and pretty, especially on a night of a full moon. But you could find some places here in the mountains where there's very little light pollution. Just gotta you have to dig a little bit, but I'm sure you'll be able to find something.
I was stunned. I looked at a satellite picture showing the areas where it's heavily light polluted versus, and it's getting smaller and smaller. The dark spots where there's no lights and where there's a good, and the last place that you would expect to find light pollution is up in North Dakota, and there is a huge blotch of bright, indicating of bright lights, and it's like in the middle of the state. And I'm saying to myself, what the heck is this? I mean, it's like 3 times larger than what you'd find in New York City or any of the Los Angeles. There's this big blotch of light, and I zoomed in, and sure enough, I mean, Joe, if you were to go to like Bismarck, North Dakota, or Minot, North Dakota, you figure the skies are black there. There's no cities, there's no bright lights, and here's this gigantic area of light. And I'm saying, what is it? And I'm doing a little research, and you can see this on satellite pictures. What that area of that big blotch of brightness is fracking.
Yes.
They're going
it's the oil and gas
crazy
industry. Sure, yeah, absolutely. North Dakota's got it's the Saudi Arabia of natural gas and yeah, they're fracking and oil. They are
and it shows up from 250 miles up, or even from 22,000 miles on the GOES 16 satellite. You know how in the nighttime hours the GOES converts over to and you can see the city lights on their image. We're always concentrating on the northeastern part of the country, the eastern part of the country. Take a look. If any of you go on GOES 16 imagery, you take a look at the northern plains and look at North Dakota, and you will see standing out like a sore thumb in the middle of darkness this huge area of brilliant whiteness. And it's not a city. It's not a series of cities that are lit up now. It is fracking. It is, as you just mentioned, Joe, they're going crazy out there in North Dakota. And the light coming from all of that fracking is actually visible from hundreds of miles above the surface of the earth. And I could just imagine if maybe a few years ago, I said to Renat, I said, my dream in retirement is to go out west somewhere, go out to somewhere, let's say in the Dakotas, go to North Dakota, for example, and we'll buy a house. It'll be nice. I'll finally build that observatory that I always wanted, and I'll finally have my good dark nighttime skies. And all of a sudden, within a matter of a few years,
yeah.
the whole sky gets lit up. Oh my God!
Unfortunately, you can't see it on the GOES loop. I just added it back to 48 frames so that it shows up before sunset. And unfortunately, over North Dakota, it was overnight and this morning completely covered with clouds. There's an upper air disturbance going through there. So, but you can see when it's on the infrared shots, the what looks like stars on the map, and that's the light pollution. I'm just quick outside of Atlanta, Joe. There's like this big bright spot right over Atlanta, but when you go up into the northern part of Georgia, western North Carolina, there's none of that. So there's definitely less light pollution in those areas. Meanwhile, we talked about the fact that it's going to be a miserable weather week. It's also going to be another big severe weather week across the southern states. Pretty much the areas that have been getting hit with severe weather in the last couple of weeks. It's wash, rinse, repeat as weather patterns in seasons do tend to rhyme. And in the Northeast, we've got an upper low that is moving out of the Great Lakes and off the coast by later today and tonight. And there are some bands of clouds and some showers. And you saw where Chuck Cardillo is up in the Catskills. There also is some snow. And we're also starting to set the table for that severe weather. We're starting to see some moisture coming in off the southwest. And the one place where there is severe weather risk today is in southern parts of southern Florida, and we're seeing clouds and showers and thunderstorms already bubbling up there. So the rest of the East Coast from Virginia down to North Florida and going west into the Gulf states, having an absolutely beautiful day on this Sunday. And there's the radar. Joe, it's like this comma-shaped arm that's coming through now. We've got rain and showers, even some heavier downpours on the radar, at least showing up in parts of central and central Jersey, and back to about New York City, and also off the New Jersey coast, moving into Long Island, over by you, southwestern Connecticut. And then on up the Hudson Valley into upstate New York. And of course, Chuck is on the edge of that precip, which has been falling in the form of snow where he is. Just enough, not enough rain to cause any huge problems, but enough to make for a rather miserable day if you happen to be under that arm of moisture that's moving from southwest to northeast.
I have to give kudos, by the way, to the Storm Prediction Center, because if you remember a week ago here on Joe and Joe, Coffee with Joe and Joe on Sunday morning, we were talking about the fact that they had forecasted 5 days in advance, day 5, which was Thursday, this past Thursday, an area, not a large area, but still is a significant area of possible severe weather, which reached almost up to New York City. And we knew that in time, that area was going to expand and was going to encompass the tri-state area. But we would talk about the fact that 5 days out, day 5, they've never done this, or they have done it before, but they rarely ever do. They must really feel that something significant is going to happen on that day 5. And sure enough, on Thursday of this past week, Thursday evening, there was lots of severe weather all over the immediate tri-state area, even some thoughts of tornadic activity in a few spots. And, really, for them to nail it 5 days in advance. And now I noticed that on day 5, Joe, of SPC, they're, again, for this upcoming Thursday, they have severe weather, but it's not quite the same as it was when we were looking at this last Sunday. This time around, the area of severe weather reaches not quite up to our area, kind of stops down across the mid-Atlantic area. But who knows? Maybe with time that too will expand. Yeah.
Might get nudged.
So,
in fact, there was a confirmed EF0 tornado in Bucks County, in Pennsylvania, on the other side of Mercer County in New Jersey. Out of that, I didn't see anything else as far as tornadic activity is concerned. Storm Prediction Center today has a small area of slight risk in parts of northwest Texas and and southwest Oklahoma, with a marginal risk that surrounds that, and also a marginal risk for South Florida. In fact, from the marginal risk to no thunderstorms, it's basically a handful of miles. So if you drive up far enough up the coast, you're going to get completely out of the thunderstorm activity. They did have a stormier day yesterday, but a much better day has set up for today. The day 2 forecast is for a rather large area of slight risk across central and east Texas, much of Louisiana into Mississippi, with a marginal risk surrounding that. And the tornado risk is 5% from northeast Texas, northern Louisiana into Mississippi and southern Arkansas. That is the period for Monday into Tuesday. Tuesday into Wednesday, we are looking at the risk area shifting to the central and eastern Gulf states in the southeast, with a slight risk from southern Mississippi and Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, the southern half of Georgia into South Carolina. And on the day 4 to 8 outlook, which is this time of year, it's always important. They got a big area of 15% on day 4 for the southeast and the central Gulf Coast, even the eastern Gulf Coast, and the interior southeast, up through all of Georgia, Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, southwestern Virginia, southeastern Kentucky, at a 15%, which would be a slight risk. And as far as day 5 is what Joe was talking about, you could see that risk area pushes to the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, southeastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina, into South Carolina. Now, the problem, Joe, this week is the fact that we had the frontal boundary kind of set up. Maybe it's a matter of timing. We had the frontal boundary set up during the day on Thursday, where it was well to the west. We had the daytime heating. It seems like this time around the front is actually coming through, getting close to the coast earlier, so much earlier. So we're talking about maybe later Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and then you got to wait for a wave to go by. So there's an issue with regards to the warm sector not being able to get up here because the frontal line is going to be much closer to the coast than you would normally see it when it comes to severe weather. But who knows? You might have this narrow strip that gets pushed all the way up. I wouldn't be surprised if the marginal risk maybe nudges up to about New York City and Long Island with this, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. You look at the long range, and it almost looks like by Wednesday, Joe, there's some. It's apparent that with the onshore flow, the east northeasterly airflow, that and that system to the south, it looks very much like a nor'easter, and it looks like also that that system is going to maintain its presence. Excuse me, for the balance of the week. So it looks like we're going to get into a rather wet stretch of weather. And in fact, the Climate Prediction Center has been red flagging these next couple of weeks here in our neck of the woods as one where we're going to see above normal probabilities of precipitation. So those of you who have been hoping for a stretch of more than a couple of days of dry weather and mild weather, it may be mild at times, but it does not look like we're going to have any stretch of dry weather, significant dry weather for quite some time in this overall weather pattern. And thank you very much for hitting the chat board. The chairman is back,
Oh,
and
yay!
he also says Mom is doing fine, and Thriller
Beautiful.
Jeopardy will return tomorrow.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So here's the upper air, and it's about as disgusting an upper air as you would like you'd see in the month of April, and very typical, by the way, with respect to the weather in the Northeast, as we said earlier at the very top of the show when I gave you my rendition of it's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, it is the most miserable time of the year because you everything is slowing down. So you get, which is great if you're in a ridge position. It's not so good if you're in a trough position, and you can see what's happening here. Now, this is just going back to Thursday and Friday of last week, so we took an extra day and a half to get the upper trough through, squeezed in a decent day yesterday. Now we've got this weak system that is diving southeastward from Michigan down to the mid-Atlantic coast, and an upper low is going to be cutting off this evening over New England. Fortunately, it moves away. We've squeezed Monday for tomorrow. Here's another upper trough that is coming down into the western lakes. That actually weakens. You can see how you got that indentation there from Minnesota down to Iowa early Monday morning, and then suddenly it just sort of flattens out. So Monday should be okay, but then we've got a deeper upper low coming down into the plains. There's a short wave on Tuesday that is running from southern Indiana down into the Gulf states, and that's going to bring low pressure up the coast. I'm sorry, low pressure to the coast. And then you just get rid of that, and then this very deep upper low comes down for later Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday into Saturday. It doesn't even reach the coastline until early Sunday morning. I mean, that's just miserable because even once we get through the cold front on Thursday, instead of improving on Friday, we got to deal with the very cold, unstable air with the upper low, and that is going to be problematic. Uh, Low top showers, maybe even a low top thunderstorm. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But it's just horrible. Now, after that goes by, Joe, next week, we do get into a ridge position next week for a few days. So this is going to be maybe our one chance to get string a few back-to-back warm days, or maybe back-to-back-to-back warm days toward the end of next week. But then after that, the ridge starts to flatten, and here comes another deep trough into the eastern U.S., after Easter Sunday, and then moving into the Northeast. So it's a cold. It's something we've gotten used to over the years lately, where the winters seem to start later because the falls start later and the summers last longer into September and early October. Well, the colder air seems to last longer, and we get these extensions of late winter to last into at least the first part of April. That seems to be playing out according to plan here with respect to what the models are showing.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem that we can get a break, and the pattern is simply too progressive. And I say that now with a little bit of a chuckle in my throat because when we get to July or August or maybe even June, we're going to get, that we're going to get into some kind of a pattern where everything is going to become stagnant and doesn't move very much. And that's when you're hoping for some kind of a front to come down from Canada rapidly to clear things out or to cool things off. And that's when you would like a progressive pattern, and you never do. But right now, everything is too progressive, as you just said, Joe. The ridging may only last for about a day or two before the next. Well, I won't say the Chiaffi term atrocity,
Yeah.
because they're really not atrocities. They're not, they're sitting here for many days. But the next wave or the next disturbance comes in and breaks your spirit and breaks the pattern of dry, fair weather with another round of dreck for
Yeah.
for the early stages of April.
Yep. And here's what it looks like on the surface. So we got this low for today that's moving out. And fortunately for Monday, the area that you see Monday morning over the Great Lakes and parts of Ohio and Indiana, that just falls apart and dies. So maybe there'll be some leftover clouds from that that'll come into the mix tomorrow, but I think we'll have at least some sun. And then here comes the onshore flow that develops on Tuesday. Here's a low that comes out of the southern plains. You can also see the the radar here from the GFS showing clusters of thunderstorms Monday night in parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas and northwest Louisiana. They become more numerous Tuesday morning into Mississippi and Alabama, and then really go to town Tuesday afternoon from western North Carolina down into the Florida Panhandle. So in the meantime, rain starts to spread out, starts to develop Tuesday afternoon with that flow off the ocean and the low center, which moves off the Virginia-Delaware coast. So we'll get into a raw northeast wind or an east wind here Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. As soon as that goes out, you've got this deep low in the plains with the big upper low coming down and a giant arm of showers and some thunderstorms that starts to come in on Thursday. It'll play through. And then after that, you got to deal with the fact, Joe, that the upper low and the surface low take forever to get out of the way. You can see it there in Wisconsin, that 997 low that is sitting there, and just slowly but kind of edging its way eastward, just sort of spinning around, and that puts us in clouds and showers for Friday, clouds and showers maybe for Saturday, and then maybe by next Sunday things will improve enough to allow for a dry day. And then after that, we'll see if we can do something to orchestrate some kind of a warm up moving into next week.
Paul Roman, thank you very much for hitting the chat board. And he says, good morning to all. And just to answer a question that Christina had asked, show started at 10:30. No, we started at 10:45 because Joe would like to walk his dog early today, and I have something to do. So we moved things up by 15 minutes. So we started not at 11, but at 10:45. So really, you didn't miss all that much if you had, signed on at 11 o'clock. And we did not start at 10:30.
Yeah, we gabbed for the first 10 or so minutes.
Yes.
So I mean, there's really
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're at this sort of funny time of year, at least from our standpoint, because if it's severe weather going on, all right, that we could spend some time on, but we're not in a time of year where we get big storm. Usually, we're not in a time of year where we get big wrapped up storms here in the eastern part of the United States. Every once in a while, you get a big nor'easter in the early part of April. That doesn't seem to be playing. That doesn't seem to be happening. And today, outside of what's happening in the Northeast, the weather is actually fairly quiet. The severe weather risks coming this week, I would say probably from what I'm seeing, the central Gulf states had the worst of it uh, from the events of the last couple of weeks. This time around, it looks like maybe the peak day is going to be more in the eastern part of the Gulf states and the southeastern part of the U.S. come Tuesday and Wednesday. But we'll we'll see how that plays when we get closer. But I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe some enhanced risk show up, and I don't know if we're going to. I doubt we'll get much beyond that, but I think we could see an area of enhanced risk in parts of the eastern Gulf states and southeast come Tuesday, and maybe again going into Tuesday night into early Wednesday. But other than that, it's April, and it's things are slow.
Yes. So things will just have to perk up. Somebody was saying on the chat board, making reference to the blizzard that we had in 1982 and questioning whether or not New York really had 9.6 inches. Were you here for that, Joe, or were you in the South at that time?
I had just moved. I had just moved. But from what
you probably
well, from what I remember seeing it from pictures, yeah, New York City had about 10 inches of snow. I mean,
yeah.
I
remember.
it did happen. I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure in terms of the frame of the question. Is it doubting that they actually had Look, let me just point this out. If you're thinking that maybe there was some overzealous person that measured that snowfall, and I can assure you that uh, that was not the case. Okay, that was still a time when they didn't want to make the 7 block walk up to, well, I couldn't blame them, the 7 or 8 block walk from where the Weather Service office was to Central Park, so they might measure it off the car tops. That snow did happen, so I don't know. I'm not sure what the question is though, with regards to the amount.
I made a reference. I've referenced this before, and I'll do it again because it always brings a chuckle when I think about it. Is that it was the night before that storm in April of 1982. It was April 5th, and everybody on radio and television was calling for a massive, unusual snow in the New York metropolitan area. Blizzard conditions possible. The save for one personality, and that was Storm Field on Channel 7, WABC at that time. And he did a whole dissertation. Now, mind you, Joe, everybody was talking about how this was going to be an amazing snowstorm for so late in the season into the month of April. And on the night before the storm, Storm Field made a presentation explaining why we were not going to get that particular type of snowfall. He said, all you have to do is look at the current readings right now from Central Park. And he points to the readings. This is 11 o'clock now. And he says, look at the current reading at Central Park. It's 43 degrees. That's much too warm for snow. How could they say it's going to snow? Then he said, and look at the humidity. And the relative humidity was something like 21%. It's much too dry for it to snow. And look at the winds. The winds are coming out of the north and northeast. He said, you want to have a wind coming in from the ocean to bring in all that moisture, and it's not doing that. And he said, yes, there is going to be a storm, but I don't think it's going to amount to much. And I'm only going to go for maybe an inch or two. That's not significant. Well, really, if you looked at the long-term averages in the month of April, 2 inches for April. And here, even Storm Field was talking about a storm that was going to bring an entire normal April complement of snow in one storm. That in itself would have been significant. But the reasons that he was pointing out why we weren't going to get a big storm, the warm temperatures, well, of course it was warm. In fact, at the start of the storm at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it did indeed start to rain. But I wonder if anybody ever explained to him about evaporational cooling. As the rain began, it cooled the atmosphere. And of course, the dew point temperatures were very low. So the dew point could only do one thing when it started to rain, go up. And soon they met at about 30, 31 or 32 degrees. The rain quickly changed over to snow, continued snowing after 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock, for goodness sake, we had thunder snow in New York. And it was snowing, I remember, at a rate of like 1 or even 2 inches an hour. It was really coming down. And if anybody doubts, as you just mentioned, Joe, if anybody doubted that we had like 9 or 10 inches, I was based in Flushing. I was working at a weather office in Flushing at the time. I was driving a get this now. I was driving a 1973 Dodge Polara. You talk about a big car. And that's what I was driving back then. And I measured on the top of the roof of my car on the Polara, it was about 9 or 10 inches. So we did have the storm. And the thing was, the next day after the storm was over, somebody at the Daily News wrote about how everybody was forecasting a big storm except for Storm Field. But and they made reference to his father, Frank, who just, by the way, last Wednesday turned 99, one of the nicest people in the business, one of the most trustworthy, probably second only to Walter Cronkite in terms of trustworthiness in the news media. And in fact, in those days, Frank Field was probably making more money than anybody in television. And so the Daily News referred to him not as Dr. Frank Field, but as Daddy Big Bucks. And so they had a picture of Frank Field, and they talked about the fact how Frank Field was forecasting a big storm and was correct. And then they had a picture right next to Frank Field of Storm Field, and the caption underneath Storm's picture was "Son of Big Bucks." so it's just like amazing. But I was sitting there. I was just looking at the old. At that time, I think we were using we had just converted over from the, no, we didn't. We still had the 2.LFM. And so we were looking at the LFM Foose, and the new Foose was coming out. And it said we were going to get like 8-10 inches at LaGuardia. And while I'm looking at this, I'm watching, I was in the office that night, and I'm watching all the stations giving their forecast. Here's Storm Field. Again, it was like a synoptic meteorology 101 lesson as to why we weren't going to get a lot of snow. And I'm shaking my head. I'm saying to myself, what the what are you talking about?
Well,
what are you, crazy? And I guess he was trying to make a big name for himself and hoping that if we did get only an inch or two of snow, that he could come on the following night.
He basically dice
rolled.
Well, look, that particular event was one of those 1 in 40, 1 in 50 year events. It just doesn't.
Right.
You're forecasting against Climo, which is always a tough thing to do. But especially if you're forecasting an event in a winter where you didn't even see anything close to that much during the actual regular winter, and suddenly you're forecasting up to 10 inches for the early part of April. It's even if you're standing there confident as a forecaster, there has to be that pit in your stomach thinking that this might go wrong. But it did happen. I mean, when I say this might go wrong, I mean in terms of the forecast, but it did happen.
There was another storm at the end of March of 1984, March 28th or 29th in 1984, where John Coleman, the late John Coleman, who for many years was on Good Morning America and was the founder of the Weather Channel. John Coleman landed at Channel 2 for a couple of years at WCBS in New York and predicted for that storm. It was a major coastal storm, kind of like it was almost like in some ways the famous Ash Wednesday storm of 1962 in New York, also a March storm. But John Coleman actually said, Joe, that he was forecasting with that storm for New York City a snow accumulation of 24 to 32 inches of snow.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, I said, he said what? He said what? What is he? It's great. As it turned out, we ended up with a massive flooding situation in New York, and we had lots of rain and maybe a few wet snowflakes. But I still to this day could not believe that John Coleman actually said that or did that. I'm not sure whether or not it must have been his forecast. I don't know if he had an associate or an assistant or a weather producer who would have done the forecast for him. But like to say that on television, again, maybe he was going for the same thing in the opposite direction of what Storm Field was trying in 1982, saying that if I go for something like this, everybody will say the next day, well, the only one who forecasted this was John Coleman. Well, John Coleman fell flat on his face. And P.S., right after he made that prediction, I think later that summer, CBS said, thank you very much, John Coleman, for your service. And they let him out. And guess who jumped to Channel 2? Frank Field, who for many years was at Channel 4. So it's a crazy game of forecasting and broadcasting sometimes as to who's going to go and who's going to land where or whatever. But sometimes you got to really watch yourself when you're making a prediction or a forecast because it could really just blow right up in your face.
Yeah. Well, no longer part of that world and happy not to be there. This is my attitude. All right. I think that pretty much wraps it up on this Sunday. So, everybody, thanks for being here. Enjoy what you can for the rest of your day. If the weather is not nice, well, that makes it a little tougher. If it's nice where you are, then makes it a little easier. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at our usual broadcast time, which is 7:30 Eastern time. So
Now we're going to be on. We're going to be on at 7:30 Eastern time tomorrow. We're probably going to be on. I guess we'll be on at 8:30 on Tuesday, Joe, because I am doing a library talk for the Crestview Library. Yonkers has 3 libraries. They have the Will Library and the Crestwood Library. I forget the name of the third library, but I've already done one library for Yonkers. I'm going to be doing the Crestwood Library on Tuesday night at 7:00. So
okay.
8:30 on Tuesday, and then the same for the rest of the week, Wednesday and Thursday. I don't know if we'll have to do anything on Friday, but if we do, we'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I can tell you right now, we're not doing anything on Friday. I will talk to you about that off camera. All right. Have a great day,
All right.
everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Au reservoir.